In the hills of ancient Galilee, as the first rays of sunlight touched the earth, a new day began. Villagers stirred from their homes, merchants prepared for trade, and shepherds guided their flocks across the fields. No one knew that this ordinary morning would become part of an extraordinary miracle. In a humble home nearby, a young boy prepared to begin his day. His mother carefully packed a simple meal, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It seemed like an ordinary lunch, but it would soon become the center of a miracle. Word spread quickly through the village. Jesus of Nazareth was nearby. People left their work, gathered their families, and hurried toward the hills to hear him speak. From every direction they came. Farmers, fishermen, merchants, mothers, and children traveled together with one purpose: to hear the words of Jesus. When Jesus arrived, hope followed him. The sick sought healing, the weary found comfort, and the crowd listened with eager hearts. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Jesus began to speak. His words were unlike anything the people had ever heard. Stories of a kingdom built on love, of mercy that never ends, and of a father who cares for the smallest sparrow. The young boy sat near the front, clutching his basket, mesmerized by the authority and kindness in the teacher's voice. Hours passed like minutes as the crowd sat in holy silence, their spirits being fed even as their bodies began to tire. It was a moment where heaven seemed to touch the earth on that grassy slope. But as the day began to fade and the shadows grew long over the hills of Galilee, a practical problem emerged. Thousands of people had traveled far from their homes, and they had brought no food with them. The excitement of the morning had given way to the physical reality of hunger. Among the crowd, families looked to one another with concern, wondering how they would sustain themselves for the journey back. The disciples, seeing the mounting need, approached Jesus with a sense of urgency, their voices hushed but anxious as they surveyed the sea of hungry faces. "Send the people away," the disciples urged, "so they can go to the surrounding villages and buy themselves something to eat." But Jesus looked at them with a calm that defied the situation. "You give them something to eat," he replied. The disciples were stunned. Philip calculated quickly. Even 8 months' wages wouldn't buy enough bread for everyone to have a single bite. They were in a place of impossibility, staring at a need that far outweighed their resources. It was a test of faith that seemed impossible to pass in the fading light of the desert. The young boy had been watching and listening. He heard the disciples' worry and saw the hunger in the eyes of the people around him. He looked down at his own small basket, the 5 loaves and 2 fish his mother had packed so lovingly that morning. It was barely enough for one child, let alone a multitude, and yet he felt a stir in his heart. With a deep breath, he stepped toward Andrew, the disciple who was searching for any sign of food. He held out his basket, offering the only thing he had to give. It was a moment of pure, unselfish faith. Andrew looked at the small offering, and then at the thousands of people. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish," he said to Jesus, his voice tinged with doubt. "But how far will they go among so many?" He placed the basket at the feet of the Master. To any human eye, it was a laughable comparison, a child's lunch against the hunger of 5,000 men, plus women and children. But Jesus did not look at the size of the gift. He looked at the heart of the giver and the power of the one who sent him. Jesus gave a simple command: "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and the crowd obeyed, sitting in groups of 50s and 100s. A strange, expectant silence fell over the hillside. The boy watched from a distance, his heart racing. He had given up his only meal, and now the eyes of the world seemed to be on his small basket. Jesus took the loaves and the fish, his hands steady and his face radiant with a peace that surpassed understanding. The stage was set for a display of divine glory that would never be forgotten. With the eyes of thousands upon him, Jesus lifted the bread toward the heavens. He gave thanks to his Father, acknowledging the source of all life and provision. In that prayer, the ordinary became extraordinary. The blessing of God rested upon the boy's small gift. There was no flash of lightning, no thunderous sound, only the quiet, powerful presence of the Creator. As he began to break the bread and divide the fish, something miraculous happened. The resources did not diminish. Instead, they began to multiply in his holy hands. The miracle was unfolding in real time. Jesus kept breaking the bread and handing it to the disciples, and the supply never ended. The 2 small fish became a mountain of provision. The disciples, who only moments ago were calculating the impossibility of the situation, were now running into the crowd with baskets that were perpetually full. Every time they reached in to give, they found more than they had before. It was a cascade of abundance, a river of blessing flowing from the hands of the Savior into the lives of the hungry. The food began to reach the furthest edges of the crowd. People who had resigned themselves to a hungry journey home now held warm bread and fresh fish in their hands. The air was filled with the aroma of the miracle. The disciples moved quickly, their initial skepticism replaced by a frantic, joyous energy. They were participants in a wonder that defied every law of nature. Group by group, person by person, the hunger was being satisfied by the small lunch of a boy who was willing to give what he had. It was more than just a meal. It was a feast of grace. On that hillside in Galilee, the barriers between the people dissolved as they shared in the miraculous abundance. There was enough for everyone, not just a morsel to stave off hunger, but as much as they wanted. The weary found strength, the worried found peace, and the skeptical found proof of the divine. The sound of thousands of voices eating, talking, and laughing filled the air, a symphony of gratitude rising from the grass like incense toward the darkening sky. The children, always the first to sense the joy of a miracle, ran among the groups with laughter that echoed off the hills. For them, the impossibility of the situation had never been a factor. They simply saw the goodness of the teacher. They ate their fill and more, their small bellies satisfied and their hearts full of wonder. In their simple joy, they reflected the very kingdom Jesus had spent the day describing, a place where the small are significant and where provision is as certain as the rising sun. The scale of what had happened was staggering. 5,000 men, along with thousands of women and children, had been fed to satisfaction. From 5 loaves and 2 fish, a city's worth of food had appeared. As the camera rises, the magnitude of the miracle becomes clear. A vast sea of humanity unified by a single act of divine provision. It was a moment that would be told and retold for generations, a landmark of faith that proved that with God, nothing is impossible and no need is too great. The young boy watched in silent amazement. He saw the bread that had once sat in his basket now in the hands of thousands. He realized that his small sacrifice had become a massive blessing. It was a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life, that when we offer what we have to the Master, He can do more with it than we could ever imagine. His empty basket was now a testimony to the fullness of God's power. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing he had played a part in something eternal. When everyone had finished eating and was completely satisfied, Jesus gave another command: "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." The disciples went through the crowd once more, and as they did, they were met with a final surprise. Even after thousands had eaten their fill, there was still more. They gathered up the broken pieces of the 5 barley loaves and the fish that had been left over by those who had eaten. The miracle ended as it began, with abundance that defied human logic. They filled 12 baskets with the pieces that remained, one for each disciple, a tangible, overflowing reminder of the day's wonder. 12 baskets full from a starting point of almost nothing. It was a sign of the total sufficiency of Christ. The disciples stood in awe, their earlier doubts replaced by a profound realization of who stood before them. The miracle was complete, leaving behind not just satisfied stomachs, but transformed hearts and a legacy of faith that would feed the world for centuries to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear, the crowd started to disperse. They walked back to their villages with more than just full stomachs. They walked with a new understanding of the kingdom of God. The story of the boy and his lunch traveled with them, a beacon of hope in a weary world. The hillside, once teeming with thousands, was now returning to the quiet of the night, but the miracle that had taken place there would echo through time forever. It was the end of a day, but the beginning of a new way of seeing the world. Before the final light faded, Jesus moved among the remaining groups, offering a final blessing of peace. He found the young boy who had started it all and looked into his eyes with a warmth that the boy would never forget. In that silent exchange, there was a profound thank you, not just for the lunch, but for the faith that allowed the miracle to begin. The boy felt a sense of belonging and purpose that would guide his steps for all the years to come. The master and the child, linked forever by a basket of bread and a heart of gold. The hills of Galilee remain, but the story of that day lives on in the hearts of all who hear it. It is a story that reminds us that no gift is too small when placed in the hands of the Creator. It tells us that our scarcity is no match for His abundance, and that our simple obedience can become a blessing to thousands. So as you go into your own day, remember the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. For in God's hands what seems small can feed a multitude.